there, and welcome. Today, we are diving into what I like to call the secret sauce of any successful project integration management. You can think of it as the master process, that invisible force that somehow connects every single moving part.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's start with a big question. Have you ever wondered about this? I mean, you've got the budget, you've got the best people on the team, a truly brilliant concept, and yet somehow things just fall apart. The pieces just don't seem to fit together. Why on earth does that happen so often?
Well, the answer almost always comes down to this one simple idea. The source material for our explainer today puts it just perfectly. Project integration management is the glue that holds the project together. Without that glue, all you've got is a pile of loose parts. But with it, you have a cohesive, functioning whole.
Okay, so what is this glue exactly? Well, it's really the set of processes you use to coordinate every single element. Think about those classic project trade-offs, right? Scope, time, and cost. If you change one, you know the others are going to be affected. Integration management is that high-level view that helps you balance all these competing demands and ultimately steer the entire project towards a successful finish. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. There isn't just one way to apply this glue. We can basically think of two totally distinct philosophies, two different mindsets for integrating a project. Let's call them the architect and the explorer. So, the traditional architect absolutely needs a detailed blueprint before a single brick is laid. This approach is all about heavy upfront planning, very formal controls, and really careful documentation. Then you've got the Agile explorer. They don't use a map, they use a compass. They're all about adapting to the terrain as they discover it, focusing on collaboration, responding to change, and using lightweight, flexible tools. As you can see, these are two very, very different ways to get to a destination.
All right, let's see how these two different mindsets actually play out in the real world. We'll start right at the beginning, kicking off the project.
For our architect, the first move is completely non-negotiable. You have to have a project charter. This is that formal document that officially gives the project the green light. It lays out all the high-level requirements, it assigns the project manager, and it gets that all-important stakeholder buy-in. It's really the foundational stone for the entire structure. And this table here, it just illustrates that core difference perfectly. While the architect is creating that formal project charter, the explorer is starting with a product vision and an initial backlog of ideas. Or the architect builds one massive, comprehensive plan, the explorer uses an evolving roadmap. They often use something called rolling wave planning, which basically means you plan the near-term stuff in detail, but you keep your long-term plans pretty flexible and high-level.
Okay, so the project is officially up and running. Let's move on to the next phase and see how this all comes together. The day-to-day grind of actually building the thing, and just as importantly, learning as you go. Now, while the architect's team is probably heads down just executing that predefined plan, our explorer's team works very differently. They do their work in short cycles called sprints. Every single day, the team gets together for a quick daily stand-up to sync up and clear any roadblocks, and they use highly visible boards to track their progress. The goal after each one of these short cycles isn't just progress, it's a real, tangible, potentially shippable piece of the product. It is all about building momentum, one iteration at a time. And what about learning from what you're doing? Well, the architect's approach is to capture all that knowledge formally, usually in a big lessons learned register at the end of a phase or at the very end of the project. The explorer, on the other hand, bakes learning right into the process itself. After every single sprint, the team holds what's called a retrospective to ask what went well, what didn't, and how can we get better in the very next sprint. See? Knowledge isn't an afterthought. It's this continuous collaborative loop. This all sounds pretty good, right? But we all know the reality of projects. Things change, a stakeholder suddenly has a new, brilliant idea, a piece of technology doesn't work the way you thought it would, the market shifts under your feet. So what happens when you inevitably stray from the path? And that brings us to one of the most critical parts of integration management: how you deal with change, how you monitor your progress, and in the end, how you bring the project to a close. For the architect, change is a really serious event. It has to be managed through this super formal process called integrated change control. Any change that's proposed has to be submitted, reviewed by a committee, and then formally approved before it can ever be implemented. The goal here is simple: Protect the original plan, that blueprint, from any and all uncontrolled changes.
The Explorer? They have a radically different view. In the Agile world, change isn't just expected, it's welcomed. It's seen as a chance to deliver even more value. So instead of a formal change committee, changes are just managed by the product owner, who simply reprioritizes the backlog. Got a new brilliant idea? Great. Let's see where it fits in the priority list for one of the upcoming sprints.
And the tools they use totally reflect these different philosophies. The architect relies on formal reports and long scheduled meetings. The explorer uses dynamic visual tools, what are often called information radiators, things like burn-down charts, velocity charts to track their pace, and Kanban boards to visualize the workflow. They're all designed to give you a real-time pulse of the project's health.
So what in the world is a burndown chart? It's actually just a simple graph showing the work remaining versus time. That dotted line you see is the ideal path to finishing on time. The solid line, well, that's reality. It's a beautifully simple way for the entire team to see, at a glance, if they're on track or not.
And finally, let's look at the end of the road. For the architect, closing a project is a big, formal, distinct phase. You finalize every activity, you create a final report, and you archive all of the data. For the explorer, it's a much more lightweight process. In a way, they've been closing mini projects every single sprint. The final act is really just releasing the final product and conducting one last big retrospective to capture all those valuable lessons learned. So, after comparing these two really powerful approaches, what's the big takeaway? How do you choose the right path for your next project? Let's wrap this up. Project integration is the essential glue. We've seen you have two main philosophies for applying it: the architects, which is all about planning and control, and the explorers, which is all about adaptability and collaboration. Here's the most important part. Success isn't about which method is better. It's about choosing the right approach for your specific journey. The architect's blueprint is perfect for predictable work, like building a house where you know all the requirements. But the explorer's compass is absolutely essential for those unpredictable journeys with changing goals, like developing a brand new piece of software.
And that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. As you approach your next big thing, ask yourself this: is this a project that requires a meticulously detailed blueprint to succeed? Or is it a journey into the unknown, where what you really need is a reliable compass and the flexibility to adapt to whatever you find along the way? The answer to that will tell you everything you need to know.